Right. We got plenty of time today. This is going to be kind of nice. 1 Samuel chapter 8. This is one of those stories and one of those chapters that when you first start out, you're like, okay, I get it. I get the story. I read it now. What's the main point? And I even went through one time and wrote down the stuff that I thought would be important to bring out. And then I started listening to some other sermons. I do that often. I like to do my own work first so that I have a good feel of where it's going. So, somebody else tells me what to think. It's so easy to just think both sides of that vein all the way and miss something over here. So I pray and I do my studies first. Then I'll listen to some other sermons. And it was amazing to me. The more I listened to other preachers on this chapter, the more things they pulled out of it that maybe I missed the first time around. And it was, and sometimes they'd say something to spark a thought of me. I'd like, oh, wait, but what about this? And sure enough, I'd find stuff in there. So it's one of those, it's just full of good stuff. And so what I want to do is start by reading it. It's not that big, so we'll read the whole chapter, and then we'll get through it, and you'll be kind of surprised at how much we can pull out of it. But what I want to do is get ready for conversation tonight, because I don't want to do all the pulling, okay? I want you guys to experience some of that pulling, and then as I start to say something, if it brings, and what about this? Like, feel free. I want you to jump in. I want this to be conversational tonight. Well, let's begin by reading 1 Samuel chapter 8. We're going to read the whole chapter, verse 1. When Samuel grew old, he appointed his sons as Israel's leaders. The name of his firstborn was Joel, and the name of his second was Abijah, and they served at Beersheba. But his sons did not follow his ways. They turned aside after dishonest gain and accepted bribes and perverted justice. So all the elders of Israel gathered together and came to Samuel at Ramah. They said to him, "You're old." Hate it when somebody tells you that. And your sons do not follow your ways. Now appoint a king to lead us, such as all the other nations have. But when they said, "Give us a king to lead us," this displeased Samuel. So he prayed to the Lord, and the Lord told him, "Listen to all that the people are saying to you. It is not you they have rejected, but they have rejected me as their king, as they have done from the day I brought them up out of Egypt until this day, forsaking me and serving other gods." Whew, what a statement. So they are doing to you. Now listen to them, but warn them solemnly, and let them know what the king who will reign over them will claim as his rights. Samuel told all the words of the Lord to the people who were asking him for a king. He said, "This is what the king who will reign over you will claim as his rights. He will take your sons, make them serve with his chariots and horses, and they will run in front of his chariots. Some he will assign to be commanders of thousands and commanders of 50s, and others to plow his ground and reap his harvest, and still others to make weapons of war and equipment for his chariots. He will take your daughters to be perfumers and cooks and bakers. He will take the best of your fields and vineyards and olive groves and give them to his attendants. He will take 1/10 of your grain and of your vintage and give it to the officials and attendants, your male and female servants, and the best of your cattle and donkeys he will take for his own use. He will take a tenth of your flocks, and you yourselves will become his slaves. When that day comes, you will cry out for relief from the king you have chosen, but the Lord will not answer you in that day. Let me just ask a quick question. How often did Samuel's words fall to the ground without coming true? Did they know that? He had that reputation, right? Well, a warning like that should do what? Make you stop and think. Why didn't it? Do we have anything that tells us what to do that we can trust? So it makes us stop and think, right? Some of us say yes. Others say, well, I probably should know it better. Same thing. That's just for free. Let me keep going. I'm almost done. Verse 19. But the people refused to listen to Samuel. No, they said, we want a king over us. Then we will be like all the other nations, with a king to lead us and to go out before us and fight our battles. When Samuel heard all that the people said, he repeated it before the Lord. And the Lord answered, listen to them, give them a king. Then Samuel said to the Israelites, everyone go back to your own town. You know, because he's going to do it. Go back, you've made your point, let's get it figured out. All right, it sounds like a pretty simple story, doesn't it, Kyle? What are some of the things that y'all are already, as you're reading through that, you go, wait a minute, what about, you're picking up some principles already. What principles are you finding? Samuel appointed his sons. Had he learned that from anybody? What did Eli do? Appointed his sons. Yeah, how'd that go? We're going to talk more about that. Yeah, he's not in the same place. That's good. Just as Eli didn't discipline his sons, Samuel didn't discipline his sons. He didn't know what they were doing, or if he did, he's letting them get away with it. All right. There's a lot that you could pick out. As you find stuff, just spit it out. Let's start with the first 5 verses. Look back over that. And let me ask you a question. What was the catalyst for the nation wanting a king? There's not just one answer, so go ahead, Gila.
They saw that Samuel was old.
Okay.
And they didn't trust his son.
Samuel's age. He was kind of their leader. They trusted him. Things were going well under him. But they're watching him get older, and he's winding down. And that's one thing. And then Gila started touching on another one, what we've already mentioned, is he appointed his sons, and they're looking at his sons going, don't see this working out. And really, what's it come down to? All right, who said that the problem was Samuel's age? They did. Who said that Samuel's sons Joel and Abijah are the problem? They did. What did God say was the problem? What did God say was the reason? Well, no, I'm asking why they wanted a king.
Because they were forsaking God, following other gods. They never seemed to really understand that God was setting up a unique government.
Yes.
And that he was head.
and I really want that picture to sink in, that they never fully understood that God was trying to set up something unique with them that wasn't anywhere else. Because what's their constant attempt? They want to be like everybody else. Where do they get their gods? Did they come up with their own? No, they got them from everybody else. And so they kind of missed that point. So they claimed Samuel's getting old. They claimed the boys, they don't follow in Samuel's ways. Is that inaccurate? That's what they're saying, right? Let me ask you, are they right? Is that a problem?
Yes, because they were seeing Samuel as being the leader of the nation.
Yeah. But what does God say was the real reason? Well, because they reject me and don't want me as king. Isn't that what he says? Now, what do you see going on here? Why don't they just say, well, we reject him as king and we want our own? I mean, let me ask you, that is what's going on, right? I mean, who's got the right assessment as to what's going on? God does. God said what's really going on is they've already rejected me as king. They just want a different king. Some have argued, and I think there's some truth to it, that they wanted something tangible, and worshiping God takes faith. And I think there's something to that. But I think it goes a lot deeper than that. They just didn't like the direction this God was going. Right. And so what I'm trying to say here is, how often do we make up a valid excuse for our sin? We're good at it, aren't we, Shannon? Man, we'll be like, man, I want to disobey, but you know what? I'll never admit that I want to disobey, but certainly God wants me to have this and this and this, so I'm going to go do that. When you know it's not right. Yeah. Why do we work so hard to justify it? I mean, really, I think to some degree, they were saying it to ease their own conscience, to lie to themselves and convince themselves they're okay. What they didn't want to do is ask God, are we doing the right thing? Are we okay? And that is a slippery slope, and easy for us to step on that same thing. Where, look, if we got in here and listened to what God was telling us, it's pretty clear. Yeah, but. Aren't we good at the yeah, buts? Well, yeah, but he's old and he can't keep going. Prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. No, you're right. Samuel's old. And his kids. Well, you know what they did? Yeah, they taking bribes. It's not going good.
I find it interesting that in the entire conversation that the elders have, they never mention God once.
Right.
It's just not a part of their thinking.
That's not where they're at. It's not what's interesting to them. Let's discuss Samuel for a minute here. You okay? You want to sit? Okay. Samuel is a rare person in the scriptures in that what was Noah's sin? What's Noah known for? Getting drunk and, yeah. What was David's sin? Murdering Uriah and sinning with Bathsheba. And we could go right down the line from Adam, like, you know what I'm saying? There is no recorded sin of Samuel in the scriptures. he is spoken of highly, right up there with Moses. You know, like the verse I read, I think it was last week or the week before, where God said, even if Moses and Samuel prayed, I'm not going to change my mind on this one. I mean, God looked at Moses and Samuel as the two examples of people that prayed and he listened. And though I find it a little bit disappointing that Samuel's kids ended up the way they did here, it's just a reminder that no matter how good a person is, nobody's perfect. And we need to treat these people with a little bit of mercy and grace. And I'm not going to be too hard on Samuel for the way his kids turned out. Samuel really never had a good father image anywhere. And but I see some differences between Samuel and Eli. And boy, we're not in any order with my notes, and I've got something else I want to say on that, but I'm gonna wait till we get there so I don't get too far out of whack, because I'm trying to I want you guys to talk to me tonight.
I'm thinking ahead to.
Okay.
When his sons were known for taking bribes, later on when Samuel is ready to die, he's ready to die, but it's still not time for him yet. But he calls them all to witness against him if he, and nobody can bring any accusation
Yeah.
of bribery or of anything.
Yeah, we'll get to that, because I mean Samuel is such a good guy that when it comes time to talk about the king, she's trying to get a couple chapters ahead on us here.
Talking about how he showed integrity.
He did, and we're going to talk about that in a few minutes, because there's something else that's in that verse that I want to show you. But he does. I think it's in chapter 12. Is that where that's at?
Lost track as I was.
Yeah. In his farewell speech, he says to them, "Y'all know me," and the reputation was that everything he spoke on the Lord's behalf came true. But he says, "You know me. I've never treated anybody unjustly. I mean, if I've done anything, if I have treated anybody less than right, bring it up now, because I don't want to end my life with one thing on my account." Can you imagine if you just said that publicly to everybody that you ever knew? If I've ever spoken harshly to you or mistreated you or did something wrong, tell me now. And nobody had anything to say. What's that tell you about Samuel? As I was going through this, I thought of Judges. Remember, we went through the book of Judges, and Gideon, God raised up Gideon to defeat the Midianites. And then what did the Israelites want to do to Gideon? Do you remember? Yeah, they said, "Why don't you rule over us, be our king?" And he said, "I will not rule over you, neither my sons or my sons' sons." Which is really interesting, because then his son or his grandson, I forget which one, was named "My Father is the King," is what his name means. And he's the one that then, after Gideon died, they tried to raise him up as king. They set him up. Remember, who's the first king of Israel? Is it Saul? Nope. Abimelech. And he lasted as king for a short time, but God never set him up. Just a portion of Israel it's one of Gideon's kids. And it was all because of that story. But Gideon looked at his kids and said, "Not the next generation. If I become king, they're going to get the throne." So they needed some real parenting advice back in these days. Let's talk about the fact that God didn't just say that, and they even admitted, it's not just the fact that they wanted a king of a different direction, but their desire was to be like other nations. What's wrong with that?
They were chosen
to come out from among the other nations. If you remember when we went through the book of Numbers and with Balak and Balaam, you remember that, where Balaam is, the talking donkey story, and Balaam was a prophet of God, not an Israeli. He was not of the Jews, but he was somebody that God spoke through, which kind of gives you a hint. God did a lot more in reaching even Gentile nations that aren't in the Bible. That's another interesting conversation. But it said, they were kind of bulletproof, said no. He was trying to curse them and said, I can't curse them because they do not consider themselves a part of the nations. They are separate, and God treats them in a different way. And so now they're wanting to be, where's Hannah? Can you come up here real quick? This keeps dinging, and I know what it is. Try to handle that for me. All right, that made me lose my place. Sorry about that. They want to be. They're saying we want to be like nations, but what should be some things that separate them from other nations? Give me some pointers. No other nation had God, right? They were to be separate. You know what? So many churches try to be more and more like the world. And I think it goes back to the same. It is our natural tendency and draw to want to fit in rather than look strange. But quite frankly, strange is good, especially when it comes to your relationship with God. And Samuel is dying. His kids aren't good leaders. They do need a leader or a judge, and they don't have one, and they don't know how to get one. Through the book of Judges, how was leadership perpetuated? Those of you that studied through that with us. All right, so they have a leader. Let's say Gideon. And Gideon dies. What happens? They go back to their old ways until they cry out to the Lord. When they cry out to the Lord, then the Lord would raise up a prophet or deliverer from wherever, right? Isn't that how it was going? And so if that continued, what would happen when Samuel died? God would appoint it when the time was necessary. And so they can tell that something is changing here. And this is the first time really through the book of Judges, this is the end of the time of the judges. It's the first time they're about to lose a judge. And they say, wait a minute, what are we going to do when he's gone? You'd think that's a good thing. The problem is they saw a problem, a legitimate problem, and tried to solve it themselves without asking God how he wanted it solved. How often do we do that? We see a problem, I'm going to fix it. And so many times people, even yesterday and today, conversation with somebody, they're like, I know I shouldn't go into debt buying this thing, but my car blew up, or I got in an accident, or I got this, and I have no other choices. Have you ever done something where you felt like I have no other choices, but I need to fix this problem, but you didn't wait on the Lord to fix it? Let me ask you this. If we fix all of our problems, even if we have to go outside of a clear conscience to do it, how often will we get to see God do a miracle to fix our problems? Why not? Because we're covering over it with problems. Exactly. You see how we do this? And that's what they were doing. And they wanted to do, look at verses 19 and 20. But the people refused to listen to Samuel. No, they said, we want a king over us. Then we'll be like all the other nations with a king to lead us or judge us and to go before us and fight our battles. I mean, why would you want a man to fight your battles for you when you've got somebody that can, with the swipe of his hand, with the breath?
That's because a man is influenced. He can be influenced by the people.
Yeah, I can influence a man, but God, man, he just sticks to his guns, wants me to change. I want to go back to Numbers for a moment. Numbers in chapter 27. Starting in verse 12. It's another leadership change. Moses is about to be done. Watch what Moses does that Samuel seemed to fail to do. Verse 12 of Numbers 27. Numbers 27:12. Then the Lord said to Moses, go up this mountain in the Abarim range and see the land I have given the Israelites. After you've seen it, you too will be gathered to your people as your brother Aaron was. For when the community rebelled at the waters in the desert of Zin, both of you disobeyed my command to honor me as holy before their eyes. Remember that story? You're supposed to speak to the rock. He hit it. And so God said, because of that, you will get the people to the land, but you will not enter. That's where we're at. So now he's just been told his life is done, right? And at his age, that's not bad news. God's warning him, telling him this is coming. You know, you don't get to cross the line, but I want you to see where they're going. You got them here. This is not and you didn't do what I told you to, so you're not going to get to go. No, God's saying, look, I know you don't get to go, but let me show you. He's being very merciful and gracious here. Verse 15, Moses said to the Lord, well, may the Lord, the God who gives breath to all living things, appoint someone over this community to go out and to come in before them, one who will lead them out and bring them in, so that the Lord's people will not be like sheep without a shepherd. He just told he's going to die. Where's his mind? On the people. He wants what's best for them. And that's his prayer. It's like, but Lord, they need somebody. Keep going. Verse 18. So the Lord said to Moses, take Joshua, son of Nun, a man in whom is the spirit of leadership, and lay your hand on him. Have him stand before Eleazar the priest and the entire assembly, and commission him in their presence. Give him some of your authority, so the whole Israelite community will obey him. He is to stand before Eleazar the priest, who will obtain decisions for him by inquiring of the Urim before the Lord. At his command, he and the entire community of the Israelites will go out, and at his command, they will come in. So Moses did as the Lord commanded him. He took Joshua and had him stand before Eleazar the priest and the whole assembly. Then he laid his hands on him and commissioned him as the Lord instructed through Moses. You see what Moses did? He said, God, I've been leading these people. Somebody's going to have to step up and lead them. Joshua didn't say, Moses had a few sons. And when God told him, he didn't just assume, my sons are next. He said, in fact, I think Moses kind of looked at his kids and went, Lord, you're going to have to raise somebody to lead this people because I don't see it. Samuel was in a similar situation, but he kind of missed that until the people came up with an answer. And I just want to say that choosing the right future leadership is one of the most important decisions that can be made if it's for a country. Choosing the right leadership who's going to lead in the future. Is that not extremely important? How about for a church? I'm not going to be here forever. I'm going to retire one of these days. I'm in no hurry. But at some day when I can't give the church what it needs, I'm going to retire. Man, that is one of the most important times in a church. That you don't just, we'll see who the Lord brings, because the Lord can bring somebody, but so can somebody else bring somebody. And he's fighting to take down churches, and so he sends somebody and makes it look good. How about a single girl picking a leader for her family? Is that a big deal? It's not just picking somebody I love, but it's picking somebody that's going to lead in a godly way. Look, choosing leadership is so important. Verses 19 to 22, a little discussion between Samuel and God. What's going on there? Samuel says, God, they want a king. And God says, don't worry, they're not mad at you, they're mad at me. So what does God do to punish them? Gives them what they ask for. True. He did try to give them a way out. He says, if you're gonna do what you think is right, let me tell you where this is going. He did. He tried to give them a way out. But in the end, he said, this is what you want? I'm going to give it to you. So does God ever answer prayer where we wish he didn't? Y'all hearing me? Let me ask you this. How does that principle relate to what we've been preaching about on Sunday mornings the last 2 weeks? Some of you got to put your brain into Sunday gear for a minute. Talking about faith from Hebrews 11, saying that faith is believing what God said he was going to do, not believing God's going to give me the desire I'm asking for. Y'all with me? How does that concept of, but if I have enough faith, God will give me what I'm asking for, how does that fit with what's happening here? Does God then sometimes give you what you're asking for, but you wish he didn't?
Well, you're glad he did in the moment, but later on, you're like, oh.
Yeah.
I should have listened to him.
Yeah. Go ahead, Kyle. Say it again.
Somebody else could be giving it to you, you think it is God.
Yeah. Well, that's true. I do believe that happens, that the devil is happy to do something nice to you so that you think you got it that way and didn't need God and didn't have to obey.
This is God's way.
I understand that.
That was not really what God would do. But you think, well, this is his way of allowing God to
But here's the point. the two things that I'm talking about on Sunday morning and this are twin sisters of the same thing, where we're trying to get God to give us what we want rather than ask God if he wants us to have it. And if he doesn't want us to have it, we're not okay with that, but we should be okay with that. Does that make sense? And so I just think that the more you put God in the driver's seat, the better off you're going to be.
We haven't gotten to it yet in Hebrews, but there are times that God does give you what you ask for after the fact, after you're dead.
Right. And that's going to come out a lot this coming Sunday. He says, I'm going to answer that request. And it's going to last longer than it would have if I'd have given it to you on earth. And that may seem unfair right now, but when the reality of heaven sets in, we'll be glad. Because this is going to fade so fast. Even in importance in our mind, it's going to be like, I can't believe I thought all that stuff was important. Just think of it this way. If you've had kids or ever dealt with kids, how important is something to those kids that you know is absolutely not important at all? That toy, that moment, getting to play that thing, that it's like intensely, but their whole world's crashing in. And you're going, it's not the whole world. You just feel like it is. I think this whole life is going to feel that way when our eyes are opened up and we see what's going on. All right, let me ask you this. As we look through the warning, so that starts in around verse 10 and goes pretty much through verse 17 to 18. In those verses, what are some repeating words that, hermeneutics, we look for repeating words. What are some repeating words that may come out of there? He'll take or he'll claim. All right. So what are they saying here? What we're saying is what were they complaining about Samuel's sons? Taking bribes. In order to get something done, I got to pay extra. So instead, give us a king. Exactly. And think of it this way. If the threat was a king's going to take all those things, who had stewardship or control over those things currently? They had it. I mean, it's one thing to, picture, you're going to have to live this way as it's always been. But no, they had those things. In fact, God is telling them, with me, you retain those things. With the king, your own way, you're giving up those things. You're putting yourself in bondage when staying with me gives you freedom. Then why is it people get the idea that following God is bondage and living for yourself is freedom?
It's a matter of who has control. If they're willing to give control to God, then there's freedom. If they want to keep it to themselves.
Yep. What could have happened? I mean, just think with me for a moment. Suppose they heeded this warning and said, we don't want to go through that, so we're willing to not look like any other nation. We want to look like a nation with God as our king. What would have happened?
God would have raised up a leader.
He'd have raised up a leader. They'd have followed him.
God would have been like, oh boy,
You ready for this? Let's go. You ready? And who could have defeated them? Nobody. Go ahead, Gila.
This brings up my thought earlier about, from verse 19, where they refused to listen. They said, no, we want a king. So they reject, it shows again, once again, over and over again, how the Israelites rejected the leadership that God had was putting over them. With Joseph, with here, verse 19, and then chapter 11, verse 12, it says, the people then said to Samuel, who was it that asked, shall Saul reign over us? They didn't even want the king that they had asked for.
Yeah.
And let's go kill them, because now he's popular. He helped defeat him. But they didn't even want the king that they had asked for. They got set.
Nope. No, that's the thing. Once we start getting what we think we want, we're never satisfied. God would have been the only one that satisfies. All right. At this part of my notes, because I wasn't sure how long this was going to take, I've got just some, I call it other lessons from this passage. So I might back up in the story a little bit now. For whatever reason Samuel picked his sons to lead, the moment they got in power, they were corrupted. I want you to think about this because I mentioned earlier leadership is so important. Leaders in churches should never be motivated by greed and money. And that's one of the things I love about this church. They've either refused salaries, refused raises. It's like, and I mean every staff member has done that to some degree. You know why? There's not one pastor in this church that's in it for the money. It's just not. And there are a lot of places that are motivated by money. When you stop to think about churches getting in leadership and being motivated by selfish greed and money, if you're one of those believers that fears God, that kind of becomes unthinkable to you. It is for me. Like when I see these, multi-million-dollar flying their own private jet pastors, look, if they made their money some other way, great. Like, there's nothing wrong with having money. There's nothing wrong with being a billionaire. But to get that off the church, something's not right. You know what I'm saying? And if you're one of those, and I believe the people are here are those who would fear God, and so to you it seems unthinkable. You just can't imagine someone having the gall to treat God's ministry and God's people that way. That there's so many people that fear God, they can't imagine somebody doing that makes them susceptible to being taken advantage of. When all through the scripture, there are warnings after warnings after warnings of look out. There are wolves in sheep's clothes. So don't think for a minute that it doesn't happen. I think we need to be ever so careful. It is common for people to get a taste of authority and then use it for their own benefit. In 1 Timothy, we have the qualifications of a pastor and a deacon. And it includes not greedy, not after filthy lucre. But more than that, all the qualifications of pastor and deacon, none of them are skill level. They're all about character. Because God can work through some of us that are pretty dumb. As long as we have character, we're going to be honest. And let's go to First Samuel, forward just a little bit to chapter 12. I do want to show you this, because as fast as I go, it could be a long time till we get to chapter 12. Verse 1, Samuel said to all Israel, I have listened to everything you said to me and have set a king over you. Like I did it. Did what you asked. Now you have a king as your leader. As for me, I'm old and gray, and my sons are here, what? With you. In other words, I think those two words say a whole lot more than we give credit for. I think he's saying he's not, and my sons are here not with me, they're here with you. They're in the same, they wanted a king just like you did. They're going to try to manipulate that king. They're on your side. They made the same choice as you did. Here are my sons with you. I think there's that going on. I have been your leader from my youth until this day. Here I stand, testify against me in the presence of the Lord and his anointed. That's the king. Whose ox have I taken? Whose donkey have I taken? Whom have I cheated? Whom have I oppressed? Do you think there's a reason he brought up his kids in this conversation? Because they did these things. They stand with you. And he's saying, they stand with you to accuse me. Like, if anybody knows a man, it's his family. So he says, my family, they're standing with you. And I'm telling all of you, if I've done this to anybody, if I've oppressed anybody, from whose hand have I accepted a bribe to make me shut my eyes? If I have done any of these things, I will make it right. You have not, and they said, you have not cheated or oppressed us. They replied, you have not taken anything from anyone's hand. How's that? From the time he was a child till old and gray, not an accusation against him of fairness.
The irony is they're now going to enter into a situation where the king is going to take from them.
Yeah, all the things that he didn't do, they've now hired somebody to do that. Keep going, verse 5. Samuel said to them, the Lord is witness against you, and also his anointed is witness this day that you have not found anything in my hand. Yes, he is witness, they said. Then Samuel said to the people, it is the Lord who appointed Moses and Aaron and brought your ancestors up out of Egypt. Now then, stand here, because I am going to confront you with evidence before the Lord as to all the righteous acts performed by the Lord for you and your ancestors. All right? He's saying, God set up Moses and Aaron and me, and we're going to tell you all that God did because you're turning off him as king and accepting that guy. What a inauguration speech. Verse 8, after Jacob entered Egypt, they cried to the Lord for help. And the Lord sent Moses and Aaron, who brought your ancestors out of Egypt and settled them in this place. Is he flaunting what Moses and Aaron did? No, he's flaunting what God did. Verse 9, watch this. But they forgot the Lord their God. So he sold them into the hand of Sisera, the commander of the army of Hazor, and into the hands of the Philistines and the king of Moab, and fought against them. Look, but they turned their back on me after I delivered them. And when that happened, they went into bondage. So on this day, you're turning your back on me. Guess what's going to happen? Are you seeing this? But that's all based on the one God chooses as leader. There are a lot of people in leadership that God didn't put there. But the ones God puts there, he puts there because of character. Samuel was there because of character. Was Samuel perfect? Did he make mistakes? I remember when we started our church, it was a wonderful church that was our mother church. It was Bethesda Baptist in Brownsburg, Indiana. And that pastor, right out of Bible college, it was a church of about 80 people. And they asked him, they just lost their pastor, and they said, would you come and be pulpit supply until we find a pastor? You're too young and you're not married yet, so we don't want to hire you as our pastor, but we need pulpit supply. He said, yeah, perfect, because I'm not ready to be a pastor. Well, he never left. They ended up loving him, and he did a good job there and got married and spent his whole ministry at that church and grew it to a little over 2,000 people. They had 36 adult Sunday school classes every Sunday morning. They actually had more people in Sunday school than they had in their worship services. They had 3 Sunday school hours and 2 worship hours. Some of them overlap. That way, if you were in the choir or orchestra or a children's teacher in Sunday school or worship, there was still a time somewhere that you could go get a Sunday school class. And so people like choir and orchestra might show up and go to church in the early service and then go to Sunday school class and then teach a Sunday school class for kids later. I mean, they're, and that's how much they were using their building. And he said, but I don't want to add on. He said, because then it can get so big that it becomes something that isn't used later. So he said, they use in that building, right? And they said, so let's start new churches. And so in 10 years, they started 10 new churches. And the way they did that, and the way they did that with us even, is they paid us a salary for 6 months while we went to the church. So that during that 6 months, we were working on all the details to get the kickoff, the beginning of our new church. And we were building up a loaner team, people from the membership of that church that would go help us, and they would just help us on Sunday mornings, still Sunday nights and Wednesday nights in Awana. They're back at the mother church, but they would just come and help us on Sunday mornings. So from the first day of services, we had children's programs, nursery, adult teachers. We had all of a functioning church from the first day. We had about 70 loaners. About 70 loaners. And so we actually had 160 on our first Sunday as a church, and then went up to over 200 pretty quickly after that. In the 10 years that they started 10 churches, the mother church went from, I think, 1,800 to about 2,300. So they grew 500 in attendance. But if you added up the attendance of all 10 churches, it was another 2,000 people going to church. He was a leader. He was a man of character. He affected my ministry in some big ways. When he retired, he picked the next guy. And I've heard him say, one decision can wipe away a lifetime of ministry, because he picked the wrong guy. And he's devastated by that. The guy seemed to have the skills, but he didn't have the character. No, I'm not going to do that. There were some other things there about Joel. Let me just tell you this. Samuel didn't want his son Joel or Abijah, whatever his name is, to lead. But, so let me put it this way, just because someone is godly doesn't necessarily mean their kids will be, right? But at the same time, Samuel's grandson, a son of Joel, became the worship leader in King David's court of worship. Do you think David was a worshiper? What do you think it'd be like to be a worship leader with King David? So it's just, let me put it this way. If you don't come from a godly family, make sure a godly family comes from you. Just leave you that thought. Any other comments, questions?
I just, the verse where it says, and sons will with you.
Yes.
I'm just wondering what their attitude was, because I could see them thinking that they were going to inherit the role of leadership. And then suddenly, here's the king, and they don't get to be king.
Yeah. They're thinking, we got the inside track. And they probably could have if they'd have followed in their dad's footsteps. But because they didn't, they became the excuse. And they lost what they tried to gain. Look, it never pays. Sin doesn't pay. I do find it interesting that they did not walk in Samuel's ways. What does that tell you about Samuel still? Those were his ways. That he was true to it. And I also find it interesting that in 1 Samuel chapter 12, Samuel says, I'm done. We still have more chapters in the second book. He ain't done till God says he's done.
And that strikes me as interesting that they said that they did not walk Samuel's ways. There's no recognition that Samuel
Was walking in God's ways. Yeah.
The part where tells Samuel that they're not rejecting you, they're rejecting me. It just reminds me of Jesus telling his disciples, they might hate you, but they hated me first.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're not mad at you, they're mad at me. They're just taking it out on you, but they're mad at me. Jesus said that to his disciples. They're going to hate you, it's not you. They're going to hate you just because they hate me. And can we learn from that? We don't want to learn from that. We don't want to be in that position, but we should be. Anything else?
Even after all that, where they're saying, no, we don't want God to be our king. We don't want the king that God chose for us. Then when in chapter 9, when God is telling Samuel, this is the man I've chosen to be the king, he says, this is the man I spoke to you about. He will govern my people. God wasn't rejecting him.
No, they're still his people. And y'all are his people, not mine. But God's going to hold me accountable for what I teach you. And I do take that seriously. Pray for me. All right, all clear? Dear Heavenly Father, I want to thank you for your word, and I pray that you would help us to learn to get in and get these principles out of it, and then to apply them to our lives. In Jesus' name, amen.